The 2021 Winter Wildcat row games happened over this past weekend. It was a 10-hour race on Saturday, followed by a 10-hour race on Sunday. About 160 people came out to compete. The Saturday race had about 60 teams, and every team carried a tracker. So then we took those GPS tracks and loaded them into a program called Routegadget. And the idea is we're now going to analyze them and see what we can learn about route choices, correcting from navigational mistakes, and just other general map and compass skills. So without further ado, here's Routegadget. What we're going to do is look at some of the competitors and what they did, and I'm going to do a commentary. So I've not done this before, so we're just going to see how it goes. The Winter Wildcat happened this past weekend over Valentine's Day, and it was two 10-hour races, one on Saturday and one on Sunday. Ace and Gary, which were Jesse Spangler and Jesse Tubbs. The second place team was on Saturday. It's Thompson and Enox. And the third place team was halfway there, and they were joined by Andy Bacon on EX2. They traveled together, so I'm not going to light up his track. So here we see the three competitors at the start-finish, and there's 35 checkpoints, plus there's a mother control here at 81 that has a bearing and distance to these three checkpoints, which are not on their map. So let's just start them going. And they're going to have 8 long tails, and it's going at 10 times normal speed. So you can see them all. They're all taking off to checkpoint 53. And I'm just going to speed them up a little bit here. A little more, there we go. So right now, Thompson and Enoch stayed low halfway there, and Ace and Gary went high and got there a little quicker. And then, but you can see them all basically going the same way around. If I stop them for just a second, I can turn on their entire track. Here's Ace and Gary's entire track in yellow. Halfway there in pink. So very similar, but some differences. Thompson and Enox in blue. And again, similar but not identical. So let's turn those off. And let's add in Mark Triquel, which reset the clock there, but we'll fix that. And Untamed New England went the other way around, so we don't want to look at them yet. And that's probably good. Okay, so let's start them again, move them along to about where they were. Okay, now they all went and got 33, pretty straightforward. They're staying on the roads. Halfway there did something interesting. From 33, rather than go back the way they came and get on the road, they decided to go through the saddle, which isn't a bad idea, except that it's a strip mine, and so it's very steep and sort of loose rock on both sides. So that's going to slow them down a little bit. And you can see the cliff bands, these jagged black lines. They're not roads. They're actually these strip mine cliff bands. And wherever you see them, here's a huge one that goes around 94 and 44. And wherever there's a black band, that's basically vertical. So let's start them up again. Ace and Gary have a little bit of a lead here. They get to 43 and they turn around because they lost their passport and they're now going back to look for it. Okay, everybody else is carrying on to 43. Ace and Gary are going backwards. Mark Trequel is cutting down through the creek and then up. Looks like he's heading for 74. Halfway there, similar. Thompson and Enox decided to take the road to 63 first. And Ace and Gary have recovered and they're now coming to 43 to punch it this time and carry on. So Thompson and Enox are now, it starts to get a little tricky because they got 63. So they're a little ahead of Mark and halfway there at this point. I speed it up a little more. Ace and Gary followed the route of Thompson and Enox and got 63 and now 74. And now they're coming around. There's an old roadbed that they're taking around the strip mine. They're heading to 94. Mark seems to have gotten a little confused. You can see him do a little loop there, confused. And now he thinks he knows where he is, but obviously he doesn't. He's gone out the wrong spur. It's hard to say. He had a great race except for that one little mistake, but it really did take him quite a while to recover. He's still not quite figured out where he is. Ace and Gary are now coming around from the low side, trying to catch up. And halfway there, and Thompson and Enox have crossed over this saddle and are now coming down out of the northeast. Mark's now figured out where he is, and he's on the roadbed. And so now he's slightly behind. Ace and Gary are trying to make up for lost time and doing pretty well at it. Okay, so now I'm going to turn off time clock. It's 2 hours. I'm going to turn off Mark. Put this back out at 2 hours. And let's just watch him go around for a bit. Well, here, Brian and Robert got a little turned around on this knob and they went around it a couple of times before they regained where they were. So these are the three leaders. This is first, second, and third. Ace and Gary are coming this way. They're going to cross paths there with Thompson and Enox, pick up 64, come running down the road. Now halfway there has to go get 63 because remember they didn't get it on the way in. So Ace and Gary, now they're all about even right there. Thompson and Enox just slightly behind, but really nothing at all. So here's the first big route difference. Halfway there has decided to come over here to the distance and bearing course. And Ace and Gary are heading east. And I believe Brian and Robert are heading east as well. Yes, so they're going to take off. Now if we want, just back this up a little bit. Let's watch halfway there do the O course, the distance and bearing course. Oop, a little far back. Okay, here they come. So they come in, they get a distance and bearing to the first point, and they march it off, and they hit it. Distance to the second, hit it. Distance to the third, and they hit it. And, oop, not quite. Now they got it, and they're going to carry on. Over here, these guys have hit 72, then they've come over to the boundary marker. Same route, 92, out to 82. different choice here, and you can see what the difference makes. Thompson and Enox took the low route, got there very quickly, and got ahead of Ace and Gary. And now they're both going to come back across. Thompson and Enox knows where they are. They're back on the road. Ace and Gary come back through 32. Halfway there is now heading out. So they're a bit of a distant third at this point. Except that they've done the O course, the distance and bearing course. So they're off over there. Now we're going to watch Brian and Robert get 31. The Jessies, Ace and Gary there pick it up as well. And now they head to the O course. Let me just stop it and you'll see. Slow it down a little bit. Thompson and Enox hit the first one, get the next bearing and distance, hit the second one. Ace and Gary hit the first one. And then they come in and they get the third one pretty spot on, and away they go. Ace and Gary, a little too far to the north, and they miss it. Realize they've come too far, backtrack, and now they've hit it, and away they go. The trick to these are you come in and you get a distance and bearing, and you have to march it. So you march off the distance at the bearing, and when you get there, if you don't see the control, you should somehow note where this point is, because what you're going to have to do is sort of fan out around it. But if you just go off in another direction or keep going and lose track of where your end point was, you're very quickly not going to know where to look for the checkpoint. So there's some tricks and skills to doing this well. And some teams hit them spot on and other teams didn't. And there's snow on the ground, and so people are leaving trails that don't necessarily go to the right place. Okay, so back to the overview here. We'll speed things back up a little bit. So right now, Thompson and Enox are ahead. Ace and Gary only slightly behind. Halfway there is about a CP back. They come down through the deep stuff. You're going to see some other route choices in here. Thompson and Enox went up the reentrant and got this high one. And then they're going to come down and get 51, and Ace and Gary decided to go get the low one and then come up and get the high one. And now but after that, they're all going to go to 41, which ends up being a low route. And so you'll see that Thompson and Enox's choice here was a bit better. They got the high one, they crossed paths again. Oh, but Thompson and Enox went down the wrong spur, recovered, got the point. Now they go out the low trail. Ace and Gary come out the high trail, and they've made up a little ground. Now they both go into the mountain bike trails. Catch those. You can kind of tell Ace and Gary are definitely faster on their feet, and so when they make a mistake, they catch up. But really, for this whole part of the course, they've been neck and neck the whole way around. So now they've made two different choices around the lake. And as you watch this play out, you can see that going south around the lake turns out to be better. So now Ace and Gary have pulled ahead. And here's the fun little bit. They've decided to go over and pick up 50 as an out and back before heading over to 70. And Thompson and Enox are not going to do that. So now they're together again, but Ace and Gary have an extra control. So now they're together, they get the island one. And now they're going to come up, look for 90 again, a little slightly different route choice. But Ace and Gary had a little more trouble. Over here to 60. And now the crazy decision that turned out okay. This is really thick rhododendron on a very steep, slick hill that goes down to a river that you have to wade across, and it's probably knee deep. But this stuff is really thick, and all these little black things in here are cliffs, and so they had some issues trying to get down through this and up the other side. All they have to do is come down and up, and then straight to the finish, whereas Robert and Brian have to pick up 60 and then take the road around and get on the big bridge, pick up 50 and come in. So a further distance, but not all of this really dense vegetation. So if we watch it play out, let's slow it down a touch. You can see how slow they're moving through all that, whereas Thompson and Enoch's much quicker, but in the end it didn't matter. They came in and beat them. And it turns out by about 8 minutes. Halfway there, a solid third coming around, basically the same route, picking up 90. And now they're going to come over and pick up 60. And then come in the same way that Brian and Robert did, across the bridge and to the finish. So there you go. That was first Ace and Gary. Second, Thompson and Enoch's. Third, halfway there with EX2 partnering up. Very similar routes all the way around. Another thing we can do is we can actually crank this back to 0 and select everybody. Like that. And turn off those routes. Just watch them as sort of ants zooming out away from the start to finish. So here we go. We'll slow this down. Oh, that's probably good speed. Here we go. Boom, they're off. Some went south, some went northeast, some going east. Definitely look like a bunch of ants now. And speed this up a little bit. That's 500 times. Now they're just moving crazy fast. You can lengthen their tails so you can sort of see. That's probably too fast. That's a better speed. But it's just, it looks like Brownie in motion. They're just out there wandering around. And this, you can see the race clock, 4 hours have gone by. This is their distances. And that's 6 hours. Maybe we should speed it up a little bit. 6.5 hours. 7. Everybody's closing in on it. 8. Ace and Gary are about to finish in 8.5. Thompson, then they're all just zooming in. And you can see now as the time runs out, 9 hours. Nobody was late. And they're all coming back to home, to HQ. 9.5 hours. 9:49, 9:50, and done. 9:58, and everybody's back. Okay, so some other things we can do. We can look at, and I don't mean to pick on anybody, but I'll Untamed. And let's see what happened. I need to slow this down a little bit. Start them off. There they go. They're coming around, get the road, pick up 60, no problem. Now they're going to 90. So what's happening here? If you look at this, here's the low lake. 90, there's a hilltop. So it's on a side hill. The hint is actually pit near boulder. So there's a side of this knoll, there's a trail, and there's a boulder with a pit next to it. And there's some bike trails along the bottom and along the top. And there's two little scallops sort of out of the hill that are very similar. So now if we watch Untamed come up to them, they've come up and they think they're here. So they're in this second scallop, but it's tiny compared to the actual size of it. So they feel like they're on the point, and so now they're looking for it on the hillside for a boulder pit. It's early in the race, so what happens is you don't quite have the scale of the map. And they look around, and when they stop, that's usually they're looking at the map. And the best thing you can do when you're lost like this is to go back to a known point. So that's what they do. See them, they're coming back to here. Now they know where they are on the map. Known point. Now they're going to follow the ridge line. There's a trail up there. Yep. Over the one knoll, through the saddle. Totally know where they are. Come down the track. Find the boulder. Find the pit. Spot on. And then they keep going. Let's see. Adventure addicts. Well, here's the spot. So if we turn on Michelle, carry along there, here she comes. She's coming down. So what's going on here? Well, it looks like she's coming to 73. And I'm sure she gets it straight away. And now she's coming up the reentrant. She's looking for 72. There's a lot of trails in here. But, so she's in the reentrant. She comes to the fork. She starts climbing the spur. She gets up onto the spur. And then she goes back down. So clearly, not clearly, but she thinks she's on this spur where the point is. And so she thought she was in this reentrant. And when she came out of it on the spur, she thought she was on this spur. So she went back down, thinking she's over here, but in fact she's over here. This is called a parallel features error. And if we just watch, she comes down and she hits this junction. And that doesn't exist over here, which tells her where she is. Now she climbs the correct spur and gets the checkpoint. And then carries on. Well, here's an interesting one, I guess. This is 12-mile Jim Benton. So let's cue him up, start him off, and then speed him up till he comes around to the O course. Well, here he is. He's coming in. Okay. So what happened here? He's coming into the O course. So he got the water. He's following the power line. Good strategy. And looking for a trail on a spur. Oh, here's one. Oh, not the right trail, probably. Not on the map. But coming down, coming down. Oh, nope, this is not the right trail. Right? Making sure. Comes back up the ravine, back to the power line. And then over. Now he's on the right trail. Comes down. Picks up 81. Reads the distance and bearing. Follows it over. And I think it was like 60 degrees for 300 meters, roughly. And then this one was about 190 meters at 290. Come over, he's looking for a rootstock, finds that. This is the hard one, because there's a road in there that pulls you off the hill which it did to the north, and plus all the people that missed it already to that side. So you come over here and it starts to get thick, and so you can't see anything. He's looking for a stump. And then he comes back and then realizes, okay, I'm close over to here. I must have, it's hard to know, but maybe he went all the way back to the point, tried it again, and then said, I must be too low. And then came up higher onto the plateau, found it, and now he carries on. This is really tricky because once you're lost, if you get to, your pace count and there's no checkpoint, what do you do? So, anything else that we can take a look at? There's some fun ones that this, not really sure what happened here, but he's probably on a road and stopped paying attention, and the road took him way too far north. And when he finally realized it, maybe he found another road, I don't know, but did come back and recovered, get the point. About these guys, this is Jason Poole and his partner Paul, I believe it was. They look like they had a pretty clean day. Oh, here's something. Let's see what was going on up here. Let's start them out. Zoom them along their track a bit. Okay, so they're coming from 43 through this big rhododendron-filled ravine, and then they're going to try and find 94. So they hit the first spur, and they know they got to go over it. So they go over it, counting re-entrants. They come through the second re-entrant, and their problem is they're too low. So they got up over here, and it's hard to know how far down you are at this point. So probably here, when they cross through this ravine, what they should have done is hiked up it until they got to the very steep. That's pretty steep in there, but this flat spot. But clearly they thought this flat spot was up in here, right? Because they come around and they're looking for the checkpoint. And they drop down and realize, well, that can't be it. Then they come over and they hit this other little ravine and they think, well, maybe that's this. No, not that thing. Hard to say, but not there. Here's another spur. Maybe we were short. Not there. Okay, we're just too low. Let's just climb up. And then they figured it out. Something clued them in. And they come right up and hit the point. And then they carry on. Okay, I'm going to probably stop there. Here's one last interesting bit. The top 6 teams, the ones that got all the checkpoints, I computed their distance traveled and their total elevation gained. It's all pretty similar, around mid-20-ish miles and about 4,500 feet of elevation. I guess the longest was Matt Szymanski and teammate, did 28 miles. And the highest was Tony of Michigan Racing Addicts, and he managed to do 5,200 feet of elevation. But overall, everybody was pretty close in distance and elevation gain. So that concludes the Saturday analysis of the 2021 Winter Wildcat. If I get enough comments about it, I'll do one for the Sunday race as well. And of course, we're planning on having another Winter Wildcat in February of 2022. And we might even try and put on a 24-hour Rogaine sometime this fall. Thanks for watching.